My name is Hallie Minzer, and I'm the restoration ecologist for the Natural Areas program. For the last few years, I've been charged with implementing a rather expansive native seed collection program internally with our staff. And in 2022, I opened up this program to volunteers for the first time. The pilot program was really a huge success thanks to these dedicated volunteers, and I learned a lot to streamline the process for this year and for future years. So let's jump right into the orientation. I'm one of 4 full-time staff who are charged with managing over 10,000 acres of natural areas in Milwaukee County, so no small task there. We do have a really astounding amount of biodiversity that's tucked away into our park system. We have well over 700 species of native plants, many different habitat types. Some of these include floodplain forest, beech maple forest, oak woodland, different types of prairies, surrogate grasslands. We have some fens and plenty more. Also, the fact that we're here in Milwaukee County, we're located in the middle of the ecological tension zone, which is basically a way of saying that we are at the convergence of northern and southern plant species that results in heightened biodiversity. Our park system has 3 designated state natural areas and 2 wetland gems. A really impressive 14 miles of coastline along Lake Michigan, 85 miles of waterways, and of course, being next to Lake Michigan, we are along a major migration corridor. I wanted to include this quick disclaimer in here. It's thanks to the Pollinator Partnerships Project Wingspan initiative that I was able to go ahead and create a lot of the resources that I have for this program. So I've borrowed a lot of their content and I want to give them credit for that. But also this disclaimer basically says that they don't endorse any of my adaptations of their content. And one last slide before jumping into the meat of the presentation. I just want to right off the bat talk about a couple safety concerns. So we do have ticks in our parks. So whenever you go off trail into tall grasses, into the woods, those sorts of areas, you should really perform a tick check just to make sure you haven't picked up any of these unwanted hitchhikers. And then there are a few plants that can either irritate the skin or really cause pretty severe burns or rashes to the skin. So you just want to keep an eye out for poison ivy, wild parsnip, those types of plants so that you can avoid coming into contact with them. It's always a good idea to wear long pants, long sleeves. You might even choose to go with the super cool look of tucking your pants into your socks and your shirt into your pants. I do this during the height of tick season to really prevent those little 8-legged things from attaching. So program goals. Basically, for the seed collection program, we're looking to increase the amount of high quality native plants and habitat on the landscape, and do this by moving seed between our different parks. We want to preserve rare plant populations, but we also want to keep common species common. And many of the target species I've selected for collection are going to have an outsized benefit to various pollinators as well. So it's focusing on the plants, of course, and the habitat, but also the wildlife that will be using these plants. And then, of course, what does our staff plan to do with all these seeds that are collected? And it really depends on the situation. It may be something where we've recently restored sites, we've done a lot of invasive species removal, and now it's time to plant into those sites. So we'll introduce these seeds. We may be reintroducing species that were once found in a particular park. They were there historically, but they've since winked out, so we want to reintroduce them. We may be adding to an existing population to introduce fresh genetics and bolster those populations as well. With our various community science programs, we've decided to include categories for skill and commitment level, and this is just to kind of help inform you as a volunteer whether this program is going to be a good fit for you or not. As of 2022, as I said, the native seed collection was a brand new volunteer program. So this program, I'm now opening up some more volunteers, but it's really going to be geared toward people with strong plant ID skills, which is the reason that I classified the skill level as high, and then the commitment level as moderate, most for the reason that it's the amount of time you're going to be going into the field. It may be just a couple times that you're going into the field, but if it's a little bit trickier of a species to time collection-wise, you might be going into the field several times, maybe 5 times to get it just right. And then a brand new activity I'm opening up to volunteers in 2023 is seed cleaning. The skill level is low, doesn't really take a whole lot of thought. It's just a little bit more time consuming, and that's why I put the commitment level at moderate, maybe low to moderate, depending on the species that you would like to clean. Our staff has really learned firsthand how very time consuming seed cleaning efforts can be, so I'm hoping that I can go ahead and get a couple of you with some interest to be part of this section of the program. All right, so this slide's really the meat of it. What does the overall process of this program entail? You're currently taking part in this first step right here, so watching the online training orientation. From there, if you want to officially participate, you'll fill out a form online, and with this, you'll choose potential collection sites and potential species of plants that you'd like to collect seed from. From there, I'll reach out to you, confirming your site and the species, and also we can schedule a time to meet in the field for a site visit. I will say that it is very important to visit your site prior to seed ripening because you want to become familiar with that site, where those plant populations are, how many plants are roughly in the population, just to become really familiar and comfortable with that. You'll then gather the seeds during the appropriate time frame there. This could be anywhere from April to November. And then I ask that you deliver the seeds to me at a designated drop-off in a timely manner. Equipment for this program, relatively minimal. So equipment that I'll provide for you is going to be these seed collection bags. They're just basically small paper lunch bags, a Sharpie to label those bags. There will be a plant ID field binder. I kept one behind the front desk of Ware last year and in 2022, and I'll plan to do that for future years. So that worked really well. If you're not based out of Ware for your site collection, though, I can print out a couple extra copies of these binders that you can take with you as well. Then I'll go ahead and provide you with paper data sheets to fill out with this information. And if you like, I could also print you out a map of the survey site. This year, I'm happy to say that I can offer volunteer lanyards as well to everyone who is interested. Take a look at the design on the bottom there so you can look a little bit more official when you're going off trail. And I was able to acquire a little bit of funding for just a handful of orange safety vests that I can loan out to you. So if you would feel more comfortable being out there in this high visibility gear, we can go ahead and arrange that for you too. As a volunteer, I ask that you send me pictures of plants so that I can verify these species. So a smartphone would be required for this. And then in 2023, I am beginning to offer this digital seed collection form, which I think is really going to streamline the process for you as volunteers, and then also for me as the program coordinator, keeping track of this data. So all of that information that was on the paper data form can now be input into this digital portal here online. There's no need for a login. And you can also directly submit the photos of the plant onto there, so you don't have to text or email me separately. But if you're kind of an old school person and you want to fill out the paper copy, that's fine as well. Finally, I would recommend for certain species, it could be a good idea to have gloves and hand pruners. It's expected that volunteers enter this program with a really strong, a solid foundation of plant identification, because volunteers need to be able to identify these target species when they're in seed and be able to tell when they're fully ripe. It can oftentimes be right on the line when it's almost ripening, it's not quite there yet, and some of these can turn rather quickly where all of a sudden insects are infesting the seed pods, or the fruit may begin to turn and be a little too overripe and rot. So really getting that timing right. Being able to differentiate target species from lookalikes can often be a problem too. And then finally, it's always a good idea to be able to recognize weedy species in the field, invasives, because you, of course, never want to contaminate a seed collection and spread unwanted and invasive species. So these site visits I was talking about before, your first site visit is going to be with me in the field. We'll walk your site, identify the plants, make sure that you feel comfortable with them, collecting from them, all that jazz. And then future site visits, you should make them when the plant is starting to set seed, not trying to time it perfectly for when you think it's going to be there. Try to go there a little early. Because things vary from year to year with phenology, all kinds of different factors. So go a little bit early so that you can make a better prediction of when the seeds are going to be ripe. Once again, stressing the idea of paying attention to weed seeds and invasives. So just really pay attention to your surroundings, making sure that you're not going to be contaminating those seed collections, not having any seed hitchhikers on your clothing, for example, or accidentally dropping into your collection bag. Which brings up another pointer I would offer. If you're going around collecting and you're surrounded by all kinds of plants and seeds, in between collecting from your plants, I'd recommend just folding over the top of your collection bag so that undesirable species don't fall into there. The next two slides are just kind of basic pointers for when are these seeds going to be ripe, tips and tricks. So I've gone ahead and bolded and underlined the ones that I have found most useful and our staff has found most useful. So these are going to be changes in color of the seeds or the seed pods, oftentimes going from green to either brown or black. Seeds falling easily from the plant, that's really a big one. Seems like common sense, but if you can remove the seeds with very minimal effort, just basically by touching it ever so slightly, wonderful indicator there. If seed pods are splitting open, that's certainly a great indicator for a lot of species because they're just going to naturally shed their seeds that way. And then finally, last tip, some seeds have already been dispersed. That can be great because you'll see with a number of these species, some of the seeds will ripen, but they won't all ripen at the same time on a plant, and certainly not within a population. So seeing that some of them have dispersed and some are still there, you're likely gonna have it timed just perfect that way. Collection techniques. So there's multiple ways to go about harvesting seeds. There's not just one way. There's not just one way for each species. So it's kind of however you prefer to do it. You can strip off individual seeds by hand for many species, like with these golden Alexanders on the left-hand side there. You can clip off an entire stalk as long as that stalk is fully ripe along the entire stem, which you can do with blazing star species shown in the top right there. Otherwise, wild bergamot, you could do it two different ways. For instance, the little bit slower way is you could go ahead and leave the seed head attached to the stalk and you just tip over the seed head into your bag when it's ready, which is nice for us on our end because we don't have to go ahead and clean the seed heads after that, remove the seeds from the seed heads. But I realize that's a little bit more tedious. So if you want to do the quick and dirty version, just go ahead and take some pruners and pluck off those seed heads and plop them in the bag. So some more collection tips. When you feel you're ready to begin collecting seeds, you'll want to examine a few pods or seeds to ensure that they're fully ripe. Once again, it's surprising how things can appear to be ripe and then you do a little bit more digging and you realize, oh, okay, gotta give it a couple more days. So looking at the example, look at these baneberries right here. Normally when you look at the fruit, fully white, fully red for these two species, you think it's gonna be ripe. But I went ahead and opened the fruits for each of these. You look at the bottom one, the red baneberry, that one is fully ripe. A nice deep brown, nearly black seed color, that one's fully ripe. But the tan colored seeds in that white baneberry fruit are not ripe. So those are not going to be viable. You would want to leave the rest of those fruits on that stalk for at least a few more days. to allow them to turn brown and ripen. So you'd go back in a few days, go ahead and check it out, open a couple more fruits, make sure that they're that dark brown color. It's going to be important that as soon as you begin collecting the seeds, you label what's going into each of those bags, especially if you're collecting multiple species. It can be hard to keep track of what you're collecting, so right off the bat, label it. Keep each species in its own bag, unless I've indicated otherwise in that seed ID collection manual I was describing. Never over collect, that's very important. And then for many species of plants, the seeds, as I already was saying, can be gently pulled away. So that's honestly one of the most steadfast rules for collecting seeds is that one. If they very easily come away from the plant, you know it's good to go. And then finally, avoid pulling the plant up from the roots when harvesting the seed. It may seem obvious, but it's often easier than you think to accidentally uproot a plant. So you could use a fingernail or hand pruners to remove the seed heads when necessary. So I'm really just hammering home the idea of not over-collecting. Over-collection can harm plants as well as wildlife populations. You don't want to collect more than 10 to 20% of seeds. To look at this another way, for every plant you collect from, skip the next 4 or skip the next up to 9 plants. Then do your best to collect widely throughout your site to maximize genetic diversity. If you stay in a single place, it's going to be a lot more likely that the plants are related and you'll have a more limited genetic pool. Just because a plant is smaller or shorter than another doesn't mean that you should leave it out. As long as it looks healthy, you can still collect from it. Don't favor plants just because they look more robust. Some specific samples of when you shouldn't collect. You should not collect if the seed is under or overripe, if you don't know what the species is, if the seed pods are empty. This is why we're collecting, this is why we're checking a representative sample before we begin collecting more broadly. It can be surprisingly easy to collect a bunch of pods before you realize that they're all empty. You also shouldn't collect seeds when there are seed-eating insects present or evidence of them. And this can be in the form of webbing or holes. Finally, there are a limited number of plants on site. If that's the case, then you shouldn't collect from them either. Here's the information that you want to label the bag with. So it's going to be the plant name in Latin and the common name, the date that it was collected, the site name, as well as the collector's names. This same information is going to be filled out on the seed collection form for data management purposes. It's going to be necessary to fill this out in the field. What I do have this year is this digital form that I was talking about. So it's going to be all that same information as the paper form, plus you can upload the photos of the plant directly into that portal, which I think streamlines the process, makes it a little bit easier. If possible, I would prefer if you could fill out this digital form, but as I said before, feel free to fill out the paper one as well. And finally, it's going to be very important that as soon as you make this collection, you contact me so that I can get the seeds in a reasonable time so that I can process them quickly and these seeds don't lose viability. That's a big thing with a lot of these species, especially woodland ones in general. If the seeds dry out, they are going to lose viability and they will not be able to germinate, and then it would have been a waste of the seed collection. 2 main spots that you can deliver the seed. What worked really well last year was dropping them off behind the front desk of the Ware Nature Center. Otherwise, you can drop them off at our park's maintenance office in Wauwatosa at the trailer shown there at the map. Otherwise, if necessary, we can arrange something else. Collection days. I already discussed all of this, but I wanted to put it onto one slide for you with my contact information as well as that QR code. Alternatively, there's that ArcGIS link as well. Same thing, just to be able to take you to that seed collection form. As promised, here is the preview of the target species, so feel free to pause the video and take a look at those. I've included one of the pages from the plant field ID binder here as an example. It's going to include the species scientific and common name, and then importantly, bloom times, but then approximate seed collection times, most importantly. So red baneberry here, it's going to be ripening fully from July through August. So you want to go out there in July and start seeing how it's ripening. Then there are going to be a number of notes on ID, collection tips, and I tried to include as many photos as possible because I think really those visual aids are going to help the most. Cleaning seed. So here's my quick little plug. This could really be a great activity that you can do while in front of the TV watching your favorite program or listening to a podcast. Like I said, it could be time consuming, but I really do find it fun and it goes quickly. We just need more hands to help out with this. So there are different species that are cleaned in different ways, and you could have a choice of what you would like to do for this. You could do the old-fashioned hand extraction, just kind of removing seeds one at a time or a few at a time. Otherwise, we have two sets of these sifting screens you can see there. These have been extremely helpful. You just basically have the smaller gauge mesh on the bottom side, so larger mesh at the top, and then the seeds filter all the way through to the bottom until they finally get caught on one. So that's a really nice tool to use for cleaning seeds. Otherwise, there's plenty of other techniques. I've just listed some of the main ones. I've heard from volunteer seed cleaners that using a fork can be a really common but handy tool that works a lot. A rolling pin in some instances. For some of these woodland plants where we've got the pulp around the seeds, using a colander and running water can work wonders as well. Once again, gloves can be recommended for some species and not all. But if anybody's interested in cleaning seed, please let me know. Next steps, if you want to participate in the program, please fill out that site and species sign-up form right there. And then I can reach out to you with confirmation of your site and species, as well as setting up a site visit. Please give me a few weeks for this, as I'm going to likely have to coordinate with other volunteers to make sure that we aren't over collecting seeds. Please fill out the volunteer waiver as well if you haven't already for this year. This only needs to be filled out once per year. The good news is that you only need to do it once, no matter how many volunteer programs you participate in for that year. In the meantime, feel free to practice your ID skills. Tune into the recorded presentation that I am doing separately that will be detailing the target collection species that we previewed in this presentation. And please reach out with any questions that you have. Thank you, and I look forward to seeing you all in the field.